Hey, everybody. Fascinating discussion today talking about how observability, AI, and automation are changing how enterprises work with a true leader and innovator in the field at New Relic. Ashan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Evan. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for being here. Admired you guys from afar for some time. For anyone who's not familiar, how do you describe New Relic these days?
Yeah, well, New Relic started out in the observability space. We actually started the space back in 2008 when everything was moving to the cloud, and SaaS applications were coming across. And the at that time, software became more and more critical. So you needed something watching over the software to make sure that it is working properly and on time. And as it's become more and more critical to the world, we have evolved with it as well. And today, we are essentially observability for the new AI era.
Fantastic. And you've seen over a decade of this as the founder, innovator in this space. How has the enterprise observability changed over that past decade?
Yeah, so Evan, a few things, right? So it's first started when we started with SaaS applications, right? Way
Mm,
back in the day, right? So the first SaaS applications, the primary enterprise SaaS application at the time was Salesforce, and then WebEx, and I actually was at WebEx for many a year at the time, and it turned out that there were more variables because your software is now running in a different place, you were experiencing it from different devices, etc. There were a lot more things that could go wrong, so you needed to observe that, and you needed to find out things were wrong before your customers did, and that's how that was sort of the first era of observability, observing that application. The second era was everyone moving enterprise workloads into the cloud, into the hyperscalers, the Amazons of the world, the Azures of the world, the GCPs of the world, and so then enterprise sort of the observability shifted towards monitoring that as you moved your actual workloads into the cloud. And now this third era is AI, right? So fundamentally, AI is eating the world just like software and mobile did, and I think that's the next phase for observability.
indeed, very exciting. And yet, kind of a blockbuster study from MIT recently showed that 95% of Gen AI projects failed. What's the reason behind that, in your opinion?
Yeah, so just step by just talking about AI in general, right? And I think the study had some really good data, which reached the wrong conclusions, right?
Okay.
Is how I would kind of talk about it, right? And to say that 95% is failing, we are so early, Evan, as you know,
Mm,
in this whole AI piece. I think the study symbolized that, and if you look at the study, the majority of the things it talked about in the study was not that the tools itself were failures, but the adoption and the scale of
mm,
those tools were failures, right? And it keyed on a few points. It keyed on the fact that look, there's a learning gap, there's a verification gap. Am I getting a verification tax? In which am I getting? Do I trust what's being put out there? There's a complexity gap because you're trying to now integrate it into complicated enterprise workflows. And so, what's the real world piece in there, right? So, what we've seen to some degree, what they're right. So, observability monitors things in production. And we actually came out with AI monitoring a couple of years ago, very early on,
mm,
and there was almost very little adoption until the last year. We have seen AI adoption increase roughly about 25% quarter over quarter. So it's about 100% every year that we're now seeing, and that's because now we're starting to see AI being put into production. So I think the study really talked about a experimentation phase, which to me, a lot of companies are, and now companies are moving into the production space, right? Now I'm talking about the regular enterprise company. I'm not talking about the model companies or the hyperscalers. I'm talking about the
mm.
regular enterprise. It's now moving into the adoption and production stage. So we're starting to see that adoption, and we see it in our product with our data and our statistics.
Fascinating. So I just got back from the Gartner Expo last week, and the number one topic was agentic AI workforces, an area you're intimately involved with.
Yeah.
How do you see that rolling out over the next year, and how can it be rolled out safely and with value behind these services?
Yeah. So look, I think the 2025 is the year of agents, right? So if you look at, back in 2022, it was the year of the LLMs, and the last few years have been the years of the LLMs. This last year has been year of the agents, and the fundamental thesis behind it is that it can take out menial work. It can do work on a 24/7 basis that a human can't, allowing humans to do more higher end pieces. Now, what happens is, the reality is, when you put agents out there, this is going to you're going to get into a much more complicated architecture, right? And the way I would, if I were to, Evan, if you'll indulge me, get into a little bit of the software architecture piece. When we built software way back in the day, it was a big monolith. Then you move to microservices, and while you got more capability, what ended up happening is you made it more complicated, right? And so observability was really important. Now you're in two. There's two pieces in the AI piece when you're building software. The first is, as you mentioned, from agents. Now you're going to start to have agents. You're going to have microagents, nanoagents doing very specific things, all communicating with each other. If any one of them breaks or hallucinates, then you could have issues, right? So observability helps keep that all in check. The other thing that's happening with agents and just software in general is that it used to be, when I came out to school, I'm sorry to say 30 years ago, right? Is that, I probably wrote every line of code, right? Then over time, that transitioned to things like frameworks. So I started getting more abstracted from the code itself. And today, where you have vibe coding, and soon everyone will be able to put out bits of software, you are more divorced from the actual happenings of the code than we've ever been before, right? And so as a result, it becomes a much more complex world. So you're going to get a huge amount of benefit from agents. Companies are going to get a huge amount of benefits from agents and from vibe coding and all of that. But it is going to be a more complicated environment. And that's why I think observability is just in the early innings of making agents and vibe coding and AI in general much more valuable to the world.
Yeah, vibe coding is a megatrend, not going away, very exciting, but yet risky for many organizations. What can we do for putting guardrails out there to make it safer?
Yeah, so I think there's every time that we have abstracted code, right, whether it's frameworks or even if it's newer languages that don't rely on archaic things like assembly, but you move to Python and some of the Golang and more of the new languages, we just brought more people into the fray, and that's a good thing, right? So that's why you've seen this explosion of innovation in the last decade, from everything from apps to everything, right? And I think now we're on the precipice of that next era. It's interesting. I have my my head of competitive with me today. He has 20 agents working for him every morning.
Wow.
That goes and crawls everything and tells him what's going on, right? We have, and I think about it, right? I think about, and I was talking to my son about it the other day. He's in high school, and we were having the conversation. I was saying, hey, look, are they going to hire you, or are they going to hire you and your 20 agents, right? And the reality is that, and I was talking to a customer the other day, and he every day comes into work, and he said he's got about 7 agents working to find out the health of his environment. He has more visibility today than he ever has, right? And so all of that is fantastic, because it has brought people, in some cases, who've never seen a line of code, into building things, and the imagination is really the limitation at this point, right? And that's going to become more and more prevalent. Well, because of that, you are going to have more and more of these sort of non-experts writing code all over, and at some point, if one of those goes wrong, if it hallucinates or it doesn't work, how do you corral that? How do you diagnose that quickly? How do you take action against that? And that's why observability for an AI era becomes really important, right? And we've seen that at some of our larger customers. They won't deploy any of these AI pieces without putting something like a New Relic observability in front of it.
Important, and yet we still see outages daily. We saw two massive ones with two hyperscalers just this week,
Yeah,
and I'm a down detector every day for this, that, or the other application. It's my
yeah.
kind of my go-to site.
Mm.
Is this a function of complexity, or how? Give us your perspective on outages and the actual impact it's having on users and enterprises.
Yeah, I mean, look, you probably won't find a better run, more innovative, smarter set of folks than at AWS, right? I mean, Evan, you see so many people across the tech landscape. You could probably attest to that, right? That these are some of the smartest, most thoughtful folks. Yet we had an outage, right?
Mm,
And um, so first off, what I will say is I have a lot of empathy for folks who who had to go deal with that outage, and I have a lot of admiration for the folks at AWS who were able to solve it in a relatively quick time, even though. And you can see, I think it proved a couple of things. First, how much digital services are such a critical part of our lives, right?
mm,
There's just so many people who are impacted by it. We had a customer advisory board, and they were telling us, it was last week, right, during the outage, and they were saying, hey, look how much this really impacted them and their company, and even humans behind that, right, whether it's a healthcare company or it's a
mm,
company that is in a call center, or it's so there was just a lot of impact. So why is that the case, right? And it's the case because in general, what's happening is, because we have we have the ability to do more things faster.
mm,
We're moving fast, and the complexity is ratcheting up as a result, right? And if you look at, and speed is the name of the game right now. If you look at what's happening I mean, you just have to pick up the paper and you see another multi-billion-dollar AI deal, right? I mean, it is just that the speed. I've never seen speed like this. I was in the early .com era where we thought things were fast. This is 7x that, right? 10x that. And so I think with that you're going to get more and more issues, and the impact of the outages have grown as a result as well, right? And so I think so I think we'll see more of that. And the trick is, how do you get in front of that such that you're discovering it before it impacts your customers? And that's where observability, and especially with New Relic, from us, we really put a huge focus, because our roots are from the application side. So we're as close to the customer outcome as possible. We put a real
mm.
emphasis on finding problems before any of your customers do.
Indeed. So, as a leader, you have a very aggressive roadmap around AI as it becomes part of everything you build or run. What does that look like as a product over the next year or two? Can you give us a peek into your future?
Yeah, yeah. So the way we think about AI is there's maybe in two prongs. One is observability for AI, and the second is AI for observability.
Hmm.
And maybe just to unpack it, the first bit with respect to observability for AI is that as more and more customers, and we were just talking through this entire episode about this, which is, as more and more customers deploy more AI-driven code, as they deploy more agents, all of that has to be observed in a way that helps them function to the best of their ability, and you get the outcome that you want building that. And avoid all those blind spots. So that's a big roadmap for us, right? So, for example, when DeepSeek first came out, we were
Hmm.
the first to jump on that, and so you'll
Hmm.
see us continue to be able to monitor all those models, and we give you context around all those models and all of those agents, and make sure that they're successful. So that's observability for AI, and so that's what we're seeing increase, 25% quarter over quarter, and I think that's going to accelerate. So that's the first tranche. The second is AI for observability, and the way you think about it is, what observability fundamentally does is it gives you a set of data such that you can make some decisions to solve a problem. Well, that needs to evolve, and how it evolves is, not only are we producing the data, but we are, based on all of the environment around us, are able to actually tell you what has happened, and how you take that and go and automatically solve that such that there's no business downtime. And in doing so, you're able to tie it to business transactions, to business outcomes. That'll help your operators, but also help your business make important decisions about how they go to market as well. So those are the two areas that largely that we're working on, and I made a lot of progress in the last 6 months.
Fantastic. Well done. So we're heading into the planning season for 2026. Hard to believe. Any one piece of advice which tech leaders should consider for 2026 beyond partnering with New Relic, obviously? What else should they consider as part of their 2026 plan?
Look, I think the only thing I will say is I would say a couple of things. I would say first off, this is as exciting an era as you will ever be a part of, and I have been, and Evan, you've probably also been a part of few eras in the technology field, and while it's scary, you've just got to go embrace it, right? And just know that and I talk to CTOs from all over the globe, right, all the time, and everyone has the same level of anxiety you do, right? And so we all have the same. So if you feel feel comfort in that. And really, I think embrace this era, because I think this is fundamental. This will be a life-changing event for us that we'll be able to talk about 10 years from now that we were part of it, right? Exciting times.
It is. Well, what a great high note to end on. Thanks so much for the insight and update. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, Evan.
Indeed. Thanks, everyone, for listening, watching. Thanks, Ashan. And be sure to check out our companion TV show, techimpact.tv on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, everyone.